Well, so this is Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. So trying to compile the understanding that I really need to have, and I see how many different things that I might have missed, but they're as we do. And I think is the way of Rabbi Nachman. We read on, try to understand it deeper. This is the fourth Torah, Likutei Maharan, famous sefer of Rabbi Nachman of BRESLEV. So this is the fourth Torah, and it's the 10th part. It's divided into 10 parts, I guess, multiple parts. So we were talking about Rabbi Babachana, who's a character that suddenly drops into a Gemara, into the piece of the Talmud called Baba Basra, which is really dealing with the rules and the different understandings of real estate. On the other hand, he comes in with a story about a fish that died in the sea. It had a worm in its nose, fell onto the land, and etc., etc., etc. What does this have to do with the price of tea in China? So in some ways, this Rabbi Babachana is really the concept of a spirit, of a ruach. In other places in the Zohar, it says a ruach that is spreading light to us. And it appears in the middle of this Masechta. So, and because of these three steps, which we had mentioned previously, let me see where they are. He says it destroyed 60 cities. That is through death, which he had said previously, which is spoken confession. In other words, a person eliminates his ego when he confesses. He elevated Malchus from among the nations, and the tzaddik taught him the proper path. Now, what does this mean? We are surrounded, the Jewish people are surrounded and have been surrounded by the Gentile nations. And the Gentile nations have an interest in this world and very little understanding of what came before, what comes after. They don't listen to Jewish people, and they behave physically. That's their world. The main function, the main thing in that life, in that world, is sex. So you have it when you're young, and you could pursue it, and youth, and sex, and all that whole idea. This is the main thing that's been involved there. It's a strong current in life. Controlling this is really a major effort. And that's why we have a person who's a tzaddik who is in control. I will destroy mountains and hills. I will lead the blind by a road they did not know. This is a quote from Isaiah. So let's see what else he has to say. As is written in the Haftorah of Bereshis, I will destroy mountains and hills. This alludes to the destruction of the rule of the nations, because the Weltanschauung, the mindset of the nations, penetrates all aspects of the life and the places in which we live. And afterwards I will lead the blind by a path they did not know. This corresponds to the tzaddik. So this, we're speaking Rabbi Nachman, guiding him along the proper path. This is the aspect of a crossroads. And we'll pick up a little note on this and see if we can understand that a little better. This brings a person to a crossroads. Now this crossroads, where we talked about it before, which way does a person pass? And 60 cities alludes to the ascent of Malchus, as is written. There are 60 Malaktos, queens. There are 60 queens. So we'll try to see if we can understand that metaphor better. Number 168 down here in the crowd, right there, says like this. So we come to a crossroads. And he writes like this: by destroying the Malchus of the other side. What is the Malchus of the other side? Because in every aspect of Kedusha, of bringing the light of God into the world, there's a mirror image which is false. So we get involved with that life, the life of the other side. The tzaddik, though, can then guide the blind person, that is, the person doesn't know how to avoid the klipos, or the false ideas that surround him always. You take this blind person on his proper path of serving God. Now, that's what he says. This is the job of the tzaddik. Now, the paparatza chachma, which means the appetizers to try to just introductions. Notice that Rabbi Nachman quotes from the Haftorah reading of Bereshis instead of directly from Isaiah, and in so doing adds another dimension to his proof. Scripture's account of creation begins with God creating the world in order to reveal his Malchus. So he said, yet right at the outset, Scripture states the earth was unformed and void, which denotes that Malchus of the other side, having supplanted Malchus of holiness. So let's read that again. The earth was unformed and void, which means that Malchus is the concept of the earth, which denotes Malchus of the other side. In other words, the Malchus of Kedusha is not revealed. Instead, it's the Malchus of the other side, the world running in physicality and focused really on the sexual experience. However, Scripture immediately adds, but the Spirit of God hovered. There's a Ruach, Spirit, referring to the Spirit of the Mashiach, the Tzaddik. He destroys Malchus of the other side. He destroys the Malchus of the other side. And how we see this? I will destroy mountains and hills. It comes from this little bit here, and elevates Malchus of holiness to its source. He also guides people on their proper path, as in, I will lead the blind by a path they do not know, corresponding to let there be light. If your whole life is darkness, and you're running around in a circle, and you're pursuing, once again, he says that the libidinal drive, sexual drive, is what pushes people in their early years. And, well, I'm a little bit older now, so I can look back to where that was my whole life. This brings a certain amount of pollution into a person, and it can wipe out everything, and you just could go round and around and around in a circle. But the tzaddik can lead that blind person who maybe doesn't know he's going around and around in a circle. Can bring him the light, can bring the light into that, and show him that it doesn't have to be around in a circle. It can be going straight up. I will lead the blind by a path that they did not know, corresponding to let there be light. From this we see that the entire process of creation, as delineated at the beginning of Genesis, can be understood as God informing all the elements in creation of their proper paths, each in accordance with its root above. Let's go on a little bit more. Try to think. These things are very metaphoric, and for me, it takes time to sink in. So he's went to the Haftorah of Bereshis. He says in 60 cities. He says he alludes to the ascent of Malchus. Now Malchus is the 7th Sphira of Zeir Anpin. She is the 7th to Zeir Anpin. And to move up the other 6 Spheros. Perhaps that's what this is talking about. Okay, let's go on. Then it says, the 60 cities then ate from this giant fish. This alludes to the 2 vices that stem from the animal and human life forms. Now, I didn't really learn this as well as I should have, so I'm hoping that I'll get some help. Because the animal and the life forms is a part of the physicality of life, which, as mentioned, lead to poverty. But by giving charity, they are rectified and abundance is drawn into the world. This is then ate from it. So then we get this phrase, ate from it. Now what does that mean? And 60 cities alludes to the aspect of 60 men of strength, which we see in other places in the Song of Songs, and he gives the reference there. So he says, livelihood stems from there, as is taught, strong reigns. Now, what do we actually hear here? What did he say? It's a little elusive to me. He said, by giving charity, you're actually bringing abundance into the world. And this means that people were able to come as a result of that and eat from it. Now let's see if he's got some help for me down here to get a little bit more. He says they ate from it. They ate from the abundance brought into the world as a result of the charity this Jew gave to the tzaddik. Now another shir that I'm doing about the Jews surviving the Middle Ages. We don't have to talk about the later ages like where we're at right now. We're still working on surviving. And so, and being Jewish, thus charity counters poverty and eliminates the vices that stem from the animal and human life forms, namely idle chatter, pride, and their derivatives. So exactly how that touched, I didn't really know. I still don't know. But let's read it again. Thus charity counters poverty, eliminates the vices that stem from the animal and human life forms. What comes from the poverty, he says, comes from the animal within it, which is inside the human. Namely, what do we do? This animal does. He's idle chatter, gossip, bringing people down with your mouth, pride, boasting, hey, look what I've done. And all the things that come out of this can be channeled and controlled. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun Elevator Kola.